We're going to check out the new Glory Road cars exhibit.
This is called Glory Road 75 years. 2023, we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of NASCAR. Glory Road features 18 historical race cars. We change this out every 3 years. We have a different theme each time we do Glory Road. For this Glory Road, that we wanted to encompass as many individual themes as we could. Over a 75-year history, there's not just one theme or two themes. There's a lot of different ones for NASCAR. So we have tried to include as many areas of interest as possible, including drivers, tracks, technology. And we just opened this in the second week of January. 8 different series, past and present, represented on here. The 18 drivers represented here have won a total of 55 NASCAR championships and 729 Premier Series races.
Like the Richard Petty car there with the fluorescent paint. Is there any kind of coating on the windows that blocks UV light from fading these cars while they're sitting here for 3 years?
Yes, the windows are tinted.
That is interesting. I just think about random stuff like that.
So in 1950, Darlington Speedway was opened, and Darlington was the first paved track in NASCAR that was longer than 1 mile. And there was a guy named Griffin who owned an Oldsmobile dealership in South Carolina. He got a 1950 Oldsmobile that was the first entry into the first Southern 500. Buck Baker drove the car. Before they raced it, they drove this car all around cities in South Carolina to promote the race and get race fans to come. And the initial race drew more than 20,000 people. Unfortunately, Buck crashed this car out, but he went on to win the event several times, and he's now a NASCAR Hall of Fame inductee, went in our class of 2013. This was one of the original performance cars, Oldsmobile 88 with the famed Rocket 88 V8 engine.
And this is the car?
No, this is a replica of the car.
Okay, this is what it looked like then.
Yeah.
Well, the car that he crashed was destroyed and probably scrapped.
Most of the cars on here, 14 or 15 of the 18, are actual race cars. The older you get, the less likely it is that a team saved the car, because in the old days nobody really paid attention to future historic value or you know, they were just race cars. They use them up, they sell them, they scrap them, they take parts off them, use them for next year's car.
Yeah, they didn't really have the budget to just keep a car just for the sake of keeping it. They had to sell it and put that money back into the next one.
That's right, constantly reinvesting. We also have interactive displays, 360-degree inside cameras in each of the cars. And if you look at some of the older cars versus the newer cars, you can really see how far safety has come and innovations have come. Take these pictures and blow them up, and this is Richard Petty at the White House. We have these for all 18 cars. This is one of my favorite cars. NASCAR in the late 50s, you have to remember, the auto industry was a lot different than it is today. Convertibles were very popular. From 1956 to 59, NASCAR had its own convertible division, and the winningest driver in the convertible division was Curtis Turner, who won 38 out of 79 races he entered. Even though the convertible division was disbanded after the 59 season, Darlington continued to run occasional convertible races, and this car is an exact replica of the car that Curtis Turner drove to a second place finish in the Darlington convertible race in 1961. It was prepared by the Wood brothers, meticulously restored. They spent over a year working on this car and building it. In 1972, Richard Petty won his second consecutive championship, and this was the first year that his Dodge Charger had STP Dayglow Red on it, in addition to the iconic Petty Blue. This is one of his genuine race cars, and Petty, of course, has won 7 championships, which has set the record for the most of any driver, and he is the all-time winner in NASCAR with 200 race victories, and he's also a great ambassador to the sport. He was the guy who really set the tone for everybody else, because he would stay at a racetrack till the last fan got an autograph. He is a member of our inaugural Hall of Fame class of 2010, and even now he's still, and he's 85 years old now, he's still one of the most popular men in the sport.
Is this a real car?
Yeah.
I would imagine it.
Yes.
They just
Looks
pull.
like most of these still have engines in them.
Yeah,
Most of them do, not all of them, but most of them do.
They have the catch pans.
Huh. Yeah, because if it's not leaking, there's nothing in there.
So when NASCAR was established in 1948, the very first series was called the Modified Division. And it was pre-World War II Ford coupes, mostly Ford coupes. And they didn't run the new cars because the factories were still gearing up and changing over from World War II when they were making bombers and boats and whatnot. So Bill France didn't use production cars until 49 when the strictly stock series started. So they began with these modifieds. And this car belonged to a Hall of Famer named Jerry Cook. This is one of his real race cars. Jerry won 6 championships in the modified division in the 1970s and 80s. And Jerry and Richie Evans, another Hall of Famer, were both from Rome, New York, and between them they won 15 consecutive championships. Nobody else won a modified division championship except them, and the modified division is still very much alive and well today. In the early to mid 1970s and beyond, there was a group of racers known as independents, and they were guys who typically were owner drivers who didn't have big budgets, who didn't have a lot of money to spend, didn't have a lot of factory support, but loved to race and went to the track every week. One of these guys was named Richard Childress. Richard was the owner driver of this car. This is a 1976 Chevrolet Laguna. Richard raced from 1969 till he stepped out of the cockpit in 1981. And he never won a race, but he showed up every week, and he got a few top 5s and a lot of top 10s, and managed to make a living doing it. And in 1981, he hired a guy named Dale Earnhardt to drive for him. Dale finished out the 81 season, then left for a couple years, and came back in 1984 for good. Together, Earnhardt and Childress won 6 championships. Dale has 7 overall. 6 of those came driving for Childress. And this car, to me, is a real testament of the level of commitment that some of these guys have. Go 14 years and not win a race is a long time.
Yeah.
But he hung in there, and he showed up, and he eventually became a 6-time championship team owner and a Hall of Famer.
Was this one ever on the floor at the RCR Museum?
Yes.
It was?
Speaking of Dale Earnhardt, in 1980, he won his first of 7 championships driving for a gentleman named Rod Osterland. Midway through the 81 season, Osterland sold the team to a gentleman named J.D. Stacy, who Earnhardt didn't like and didn't get along with.
We actually found the former Rod Osterland race shop building here in Charlotte, with probably 30 other different race shops. If you'd like to see that, you can find that video, link in the description. And you should subscribe and check out the Racing History Nerd Zone playlist. All kinds of stuff like that is on there.
So this was the car Earnhardt drove for Rod Osterland in 1981. It's the only year he drove a Pontiac, and midway through the year he moved to Richard Childress Racing. But he formed an alliance with Wrangler, the Blue Jean people, and they sponsored him for many years. And they ran a promotional campaign called One Tough Customer, which featured Earnhardt, who was a natural for that. You know, he was a cowboy boots, blue jeans kind of guy, and he fit their marketing ideal perfectly. So even though he changed teams, they stuck with him and moved with him when he went to Bud Moore in 1982 and 83, and then back to Childress in 84.
That is a pretty cool story, because weren't they contractually obligated with Bud Moore, so they ended up sponsoring Ricky Rudd's car and Dale's car for a year?
Yep.
That's how bad they wanted to stay with Dale?
Yeah, I mean, Dale had millions of fans. He was an incredibly popular driver, and his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. was too. And you know, he was the face of NASCAR sort of post Richard Petty. In the 80s and into the 90s, Dale was the man. He was certainly one of the most popular drivers in the sport, and the cool thing about him is not only did he have a huge fan base, he had a huge base of people who didn't like him. And we have a saying in racing, in racing as in wrestling, hate is great, and you like to have guys who are rivals. And so he had great rivalries with Darrell Waltrip, later with Jeff Gordon, and so he was probably the most loved racer in the sport during his heyday, and somebody who a lot of fans didn't like, and that was good. He told Jeff Gordon once, he said, Gordon was being successful in his early career, and he said to Dale, he said, I'm getting booed a lot. Should I worry about that? And Dale said, no. He said, it doesn't matter if they cheer you or they boo you. As long as they're making noise, you're making an impression on them. What you have to worry about is when they don't say anything. This is a 1991 Oldsmobile that belonged to Bobby Labonte, and he restored it. Bobby is a classic example of somebody who worked his way up through the ranks in NASCAR. He's a 4-time NASCAR champion. He won his first championship in 1984 as a crewman on his brother Terry's car when Terry won the Cup championship. He won his second championship in '91 with this car when he was the Busch Grand National Series driving champion. Then he won a Busch Owners Championship in 1984 with David Green as his driver. And finally he won a Cup championship in 2000 driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. So Bobby and Terry are brothers who are both in the Hall of Fame. And Bobby really started his way kind of at the bottom and worked his way up to become a full-time champion.
And this is his car?
Yes, this is his car. This is his real race car. He restored it.
I mean, like, he owns it.
Yes.
He lent it to the museum. That's even cooler. And he did all this himself?
Yes.
Wow.
So Jeff Gordon is the only 4-time Cup champion in NASCAR. And between 1995 and 1998, he won 3 of those 4 championships. And his favorite chassis was a car that the team nicknamed Blacker. And that's that chassis right there. He won more races in that chassis than any other single car. And if you saw that car race in 95, 96, 97, 98, almost all the time it had the Rainbow Warriors paint scheme on it, one of the most iconic paint schemes in the history of NASCAR. This particular car, this chassis, was painted in what they call DuPont Chrome Illusion paint, and it was raced in these colors in the 1998 All-Star race at Charlotte, where Gordon was leading and unfortunately ran out of gas on the last lap. The Chrome Illusion paint changes color in different light, and back in 1998, 25 years ago, it was $800 a quart. So it's an expensive proposition to use on a custom car. But this was Gordon's favorite car. In 1998, Darrell Waltrip had a terrible start to his season. His team wasn't running well, just nothing was going right. Steve Park was driving for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, the team owned by Hall of Famer Dale Earnhardt. And Earnhardt and Waltrip were rivals on the track. But when Park got hurt, Earnhardt went to Waltrip and said, I want you to drive my #1 Pennzoil Chevrolet. And in 1998, he did that, filled in for Park in 13 races. One of them was at Pocono Raceway. And at Pocono, Darrell nearly won the race and got out of his car and wept because he thought, he was wondering at the end of his career, was he washed up? And he got out of his car and he proved to himself that he could still race competitively with the best racers of the day. So in his interactive display, we put a copy of this article out of Winston Cup scene that I wrote when I was at the race in '98. So that's that car right there.
Is that the race where afterwards he said they were throwing dirt on me and I climbed out?
Yeah.
That's a really cool quote.
They didn't put quite enough dirt on me. Kicked it off and crawled back out.
Jack Roush was one of the most unique team owners in NASCAR history. When he came into the sport in the late 80s, there was a path that young drivers took. They would go into Cup on a back marker team, run for 2 or 3 years, go to a mid-level team, run for 2, 3, 4 years, and maybe by the time they were in their 30s, they were ready for a competitive Cup ride. Jack changed all that, and Jack hired unproven drivers, most of whom had never won a NASCAR race before, many of whom had never even entered a NASCAR race. One of the guys he hired was Greg Biffle from Washington State in the Pacific Northwest. Biffle was a great local short track racer, and he rewarded Roush's faith in him by delivering Roush Racing their first NASCAR championship, which was in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2000 in that truck. And 2 years later, Biffle moved up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series and won the NASCAR Xfinity Championship. So those were Roush's first 2 championships, both with Greg Biffle. And Roush continued to hire drivers who didn't have a lot of NASCAR experience. In fact, in the first couple decades, the only one he ever hired who'd won a race was Jamie McMurray, who won 1 race filling in for Sterling Marlin.
That's a stat I did not know about.
Adam Petty was somebody who, it was said of Adam that he could talk like his father and race like his grandfather. He's the first 4th generation professional sports athlete in the United States. Adam unfortunately was taken from us before his prime. He perished in a crash at New Hampshire Motor Speedway in 2000. But we talked to Kyle Petty, his father. We wanted to get one of his cars on here to represent the family lineage and 4 generations of family. And if you notice, the front of his car is all kind of pockmarked. This was the car he raced at Daytona in 2000, finished in the top 10 in the Busch Grand National race in 2000. And those marks that you see on the front of the car are caused by the sand that comes up off the track. Daytona Beach is sandy, and that sand hits the front of the car and wears it down and leaves marks. But we miss Adam very badly, but we wanted to honor his legacy and the heritage of the Petty family by putting one of his cars on Glory Road. In 2001, Toyota decided it wanted to go NASCAR racing, and it took a very measured approach, starting off slowly and working its way up into the Cup Series. In 2001, they hired a gentleman named Robert Huffman to race in the Goodies Dash Series, which was a compact car series. And in 2003, Robert drove this car that you see right here to Toyota's first NASCAR championship in the Goodies Dash. It was his 5th championship overall, but it was the first for Toyota. And this is Toyota Celica, little sports car. You know, they don't, this is one of the series that they no longer race. Sort of interesting piece of trivia, that right there is the flag stand from North Wilkesboro Motor Speedway. And if you look at the panel behind it, everyone who was employed full-time here in this building when it opened in 2010, we photoshopped their faces in there.
Which square is on there?
In the square behind where the flag stand is.
Oh, okay. That's pretty funny. Are you in there?
No, I was not working here. Jimmy Johnson is one of our 3 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champions, along with Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty. And we've had a number of his championship cars in here at different times. We wanted to include this car, which he swept in 2003, won the NASCAR All-Star race and the Coca-Cola 600. And you see at the All-Star race, much like we showed with Jeff Gordon's DuPont Chrome Illusion paint scheme, this is a unique paint scheme for his sponsor, Lowe's. And Jimmy was one of the most successful racers ever at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and 7 championships speak volumes about his talent and the talent of his Hendrick Motorsports team. And he and crew chief Chad Knaus made a great combination. They really pushed each other to greatness and to championship accomplishments.
Dash says midnight special on it. I guess Jimmy Johnson had his own midnight too, apparently.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. was 15-time NASCAR most popular driver. He won the Daytona 500 twice. He had one stretch at Talladega Superspeedway where he had 5 victories and 2 second-place finishes in 7 races. He has won multiple championships as a NASCAR Xfinity Series team owner, and he won 15 consecutive NASCAR Most Popular Driver awards. Now he has transitioned out of the race car into a broadcasting career with NBC, and he has an enormously popular weekly podcast called the Dale Jr. Download. And this car sort of symbolizes the transition that some drivers make from being on track to going into media and television and radio. Wendell Scott, the late Wendell Scott, was the first black driver to win a NASCAR National Series race, 1963. Bubba Wallace in 2014 drove this truck at Martinsville Speedway to honor Wendell Scott. Wendell was from Danville, Virginia, which is only about 20 miles from Martinsville. And Bubba won the race in this, which was his second victory at Martinsville. And he joined Wendell Scott as winner of a national, black driver as a winner of a National Series NASCAR race. And he ran this paint scheme. 34 was Wendell Scott's number. The sort of pale blue was his color, and this was Bubba's tribute to Wendell, and he managed to win the race in it. So it was a momentous victory. The Wendell Scott's family was at Martinsville when Bubba won, so it was a big moment for him and for the Scott family. Joe Gibbs was a team builder. He was a team builder as a pro football coach. He won 3 Super Bowls with Washington Redskins, and he's won a bunch of championships as a car owner in NASCAR. And what NASCAR and the NFL have in common is it takes the same things to make it work. You have to make the people work together. You have to have teamwork. You have to balance a lot of high intensity type A people, some with big egos, almost all, alpha males and really hard chargers. And Joe was able to do that to get to the Super Bowl and win it 3 times. And he won NASCAR Cup championships, 2 with Tony Stewart, 2 with Kyle Busch, and 1 with Bobby Labonte. And this is Kyle Busch's second of 2 that he won the championship with in 2019. And part of the reason Gibbs selected this car to be included in our exhibit was they've had a long-running sponsor relationship with Interstate Batteries. They've been with Joe Gibbs for 30 years, which is pretty unusual in any sport. I love nothing more than the story of a little guy who toils for a long time and then achieves greatness. Josh Berry drove late models for 11 years, and in the 11th year he won the NASCAR Weekly Racing Series Championship, driving for Junior Motorsports, team Dale Earnhardt Jr. owns. And Josh drove this car. This is his actual championship car from 2020. It took him 11 years to win a championship, and he was rewarded. Junior promoted him. He now drives for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, and last year he made the championship 4 and won several races. So it was an incredible progression from toiling at the weekly level to becoming a star in one of NASCAR's second biggest series. And last but certainly not least, NASCAR is no longer just a national phenomenon. They race all over the world. There is now a NASCAR Euro Series. There is Pinty's series in Canada, and there's a NASCAR Mexico Series. This car belongs to a gentleman named LP Dumoulin, who is a 3-time Pinty Series championship winner in Canada, and this is the first non-US NASCAR car we've had in the 5 iterations of Glory Road. So it's a big deal to the fans in Canada, that we have this car here, and it's a big deal to us too. So in all years past, we've had 18 cars on Glory Road. For the first time in 2023, we're going to have a 19th car. This number 2 Ford Mustang NASCAR Next Gen car that belongs to Team Penske. This is the actual car that Austin Cindric won the 2022 Daytona 500 in. It is the first NASCAR Next Gen car we will have in this building. Typically what happens is when a team wins the Daytona 500 car, their car goes into a museum in Daytona for a year, and on the morning of the next Daytona 500, it's returned to them in a ceremony. So Team Penske will pick this up at this year's Daytona 500. They're going to take it back to their shop in Mooresville, North Carolina, freshen it up a bit, and then they'll bring it into here. We are thrilled to have a NASCAR Next Gen car. We've never had one before, and so it will be a great addition to Glory Road, and it will be the first time we have 19 cars on Glory Road.
Where's it gonna go?
It's gonna go right here. We're gonna slide these cars back a couple of feet, the first 2 rows, and then we go right in there.
Was there some kind of platform that comes in here that
Yes.
is able to,
Yes.
do you direct roll them up there, or does it pick it up and then you can roll it flat?
Yeah, the first 12 cars are rolled up. The last 6 are craned in through the roof.
Really?
We closed for an entire week to do this. It takes a tremendous amount of time and expense to get this changed out, which is why we only do it every 3 years.
Through the roof?
Yes.
So, do you take the roof apart, or is there a door built into there? How does that work? Was the building designed with that in mind?
Yes.
That's insane. I'd like to find some pictures of that process. So the cars don't come through the roof?
No, the cars do not come through the roof. The rigging comes through the roof, picks the cars up and places them on Glory Road. The whole process to deinstall the old Glory Road and reinstall the new one takes a full week, and we are actually closed for a week while we do this.
So those cars, they're on the ground in here, and then they get picked up and put over there?
Correct.
Interesting. Yeah, the vision in my head was just cars coming out of the ceiling.
No cars coming out of the ceiling. Just the rigging coming out of the ceiling. But we work with a professional rigging company that's done this for all 5 iterations of Glory Road that we've had since we opened in 2010.
That's crazy to imagine. Does that influence the type of cars that go up there? Like maybe you wouldn't want to carry Richard Petty's 45-year-old car with a crane?
Historically, we have arranged the cars from oldest to newest, because one of the things that happens is, if you look inside the roof of this 1950 Oldsmobile, there's no roll cage. There's a roll bar in the back seat, but you can't lift the car by the roof, or it would, the roof would bend, and we don't want that to happen. So we put the older cars down here. The cars with a full roll cage are cradled by the roll cage.
Interesting.
It's cool to note that it still has like headliner and full interior, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So this is the kind of tactical questions that we like to figure out. Like, how do you, because I was looking at the cars up on the banking over there, and like just to roll, if you were to roll those up there, that'd be really hard. You need a bunch of guys, and if it started to go, like, it's just gonna keep rolling. Are they anchored to the floor, or do they just sit?
Every one of the 18 cars is anchored to the floor from the bottom to the top. Yes, they have to be anchored for safety reasons. We go through extraordinary lengths to make sure we don't damage the cars, to make sure the cars stay put where they are. So we really do a lot to maintain the integrity of the cars in the exhibit.
These cars down here aren't part of Glory Road, but we want to look at them anyway, so we're going to.
So this room is known as the Great Hall, and we change this exhibit out typically roughly once a year. And this exhibit is called Chevrolet, the winningest brand in NASCAR Cup Series history. As of 2021, Chevrolet won its 800th race in NASCAR, and we wanted to work in collaboration with them to create an exhibit that honored the fact that they'd won more races than any other manufacturer. So we have, milestone wins marked by car and by driver where they were. We worked with our lenders. This car is a replica of the 1955 Chevrolet that Herb Thomas won the Darlington Southern 500 in. This car went 500 miles on a single set of tires, and the fact that it was lighter weight, didn't have the horsepower of the fastest cars in the field, which were the big Chryslers, but it was much easier on tires because it was lighter and it got much better fuel economy. So Herb won the Southern 500. And you can see here, look at the crowd they had in 1955. I mean, there were people mobbing his car in Victory Lane.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're all wearing white shirts too.
Yes, yes. People dressed up to go to the races then. Which, you think about it now, it's kind of funny. We have another car from Richard Petty, 7-time NASCAR champion, and again got the iconic Petty blue, STP orange, or STP Dayglow red paint scheme that began in the early 70s.
We have a couple different videos of the Petty compound. One of them is in the Petty Museum. If you want to see more in depth of these cars, Dale Inman explains all that. And there's a video of Richard showing us his childhood house, which is something very unique. But I guess both of these cars came from the Petty Museum, didn't they?
Yes. So in 1987, Dale Earnhardt Sr. had his best year ever. Won 11 races, won the championship by more than 400 points. He won 6 out of the first 8 races, which is pretty much unheard of. And it was his 87 was his 3rd of 7 championships. And his crew chief at that time, Kirk Shelmerdine, was just inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in late January. And Kirk was crew chief for Dale in 87 and crew chief for 44 of Dale's 76 race victories and crew chief for 4 of Dale's 7 championships.
This is my favorite paint scheme. I love it. I love everything about it.
It just looks so good.
A little fun fact for you guys. Did you know there's 2 different kinds of 3 fonts for Dale Earnhardt? One of them was on a car, the other one was on the merchandise, with one exception that I'm aware of. If you can see on this car, there's a flat top and a flat bottom. This is the merchandise 3, or the one on the car was round on the top and bottom. And you can see it there too, it's round on the top and bottom. But this one is really, really flat and more kind of blocky looking. That's one way to tell if a car actually came from RCR or not, is the RCR made ones will always have the round 3 on it. And the only time I have ever seen the blocky flat top 3 on the track was on the nationwide car that Dale Jr. ran at Daytona in 2010. I think some of those like throwback type cars might have it, but even the 3 that Austin Dillon uses now is the correct round top, round bottom 3. So there you have it. Picky about the orange and picky about the 3. Some things people don't notice.
NASCAR's only 4-time champion is Jeff Gordon, who ranks 4th all time behind the 3 7-time winners. This was his 2nd generation Hendrick Motorsports paint scheme, the flames on the traditional blue color. Gordon drove this paint scheme, I believe, in 2001 when he won his final championship. Jimmy Johnson did something that no one's ever done before, no one's ever done since, and probably no one ever will. Won 5 consecutive championships from 2006 to 2010. This is his 2010 championship car. He's amassed an incredible record, won 83 races. I'm sure he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer as soon as he is eligible. But he is certainly the best driver, or most successful driver, let's just say, of the period between 2005 5 in 2015-16. This is kind of a cool story. Chevrolet won its 800th race at a track called Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. It's a road course. And the winning driver was Chase Elliott, the 2020 champion. And Chase won this race in virtual monsoon conditions. And if you notice, you know, NASCAR will run on road courses in the rain, which they don't do on ovals. If you look up close, this car's got rain tires on it. It's got a windshield wiper on it. And it's got the rain tires on the back. And I should point out, while we're looking up at Glory Road, Glory Road starts out flat, and where the WeatherTech number 47 car is, that's 33 degrees of banking, which is the same exact degree of banking as Talladega Superspeedway. We have stairs you can walk up, but you have to hold on to the rail, or you have to have incredibly good balance.
I noticed the tracks along that go up it, are those placed at the marker that is the banking of that track?
Yes. The tracks are selected for the actual banking of where Glory Road is at any point in time.
As I saw Rockingham up there, and I think unless you've actually been to Rockingham, you don't realize how banked it actually is. It looks relatively, I mean, not flat, but you know, not like that.
Well, all these tracks, you only get a limited sense of the banking on TV. Like for years at Bristol Motor Speedway, they had a gate. Now they have a tunnel. You can walk under the track, but they had a gate. You had to walk up the side of it. And even though Bristol's a really small track, and it's not a long distance from the bottom of the track to the top of the track, you're still by the end of it, you know, kind of breathing heavy, and because it's so steep going up.
I've heard a lot of stories about people before they could pull the haulers in, like they'd have to roll their toolboxes down, and people dumping toolboxes and rolling things over, and just all kinds of calamity for that process.
You'll have that in big time auto racing.
Is it a coincidence that the car you told the Pocono story about is placed where?
Total coincidence. So every track is different. Every track surface feels different, and you can look at, say, a Charlotte Motor Speedway and a Texas Motor Speedway, and on television maybe they look the same, but they have different asphalt combinations on there, different degrees of abrasion, and slightly different configurations. So that's why crew chiefs have to have setups that are unique to each track, because no two tracks are exactly the same. So the Hall of Honor is the room in the NASCAR Hall of Fame that we regard as the most important. Every year we induct 3 new members into the Hall of Fame, and each of them gets an artifact case that holds about 20 to 25 artifacts in a car. And they stay in this room for a period of 1 year. This room is arranged in a circle, and it's arranged that way to signify that no one inductee is any more important than any other inductee, and no class is more important than the other. If you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer for life. Doesn't matter if you won in the first class of 2010, the class of 2020, the class of 2030. You're a Hall of Famer. So we work closely with the inductees to pick out artifacts that they think signify the most important moments of their career, and sometimes some fun and offbeat ones too. So this is a process we go through. After they're voted on, typically in May of each year, and so in June or July we'll start meeting with the honorees and helping them choose their artifacts.
He's a racer with the helps other racers out. You can see if you're struggling, doesn't want to give you some advice. He's done it to me. That's why I always love Herschel.
When you think about who loved racing and was passionate about driving and devoting themselves to NASCAR and stock car racing, I think.
If you like the stuff we're wearing in these videos, you can find them at StapletownAutoWorks.com. StapletownAutoWorks.com. Check it out. Stickers, they come in a 5-pack, but they're not, we didn't put them all together in the toolbox. Then the screecher, boom tube wings, wrench in his foot, all that stuff. Matching hat for the hoodie. That's the thing. We always have a matching hat for anything that we have, so you can be complete. And the back of the shirt I'm wearing has this super cool Buick inspired, I guess, car on it, because no one gets mad about a Buick. And boom tubes. If you like boom tubes and you want to make cool noises, this is the shirt for you.
There's also a t-shirt version of the shirt that I'm wearing.
So you can be all set. They're inspired by like Dale Earnhardt's early 90s pit crew uniforms, if you didn't pick that up already.
She's getting to work.
Come to StapletonAutoWorks.com and buy a shirt so I can get a new bone.